Hi, Tara here, and I have a question from the health and wellness class I'm going to answer right now. And the question is intermittent fasting really a good way to lose weight? So, what I'm going to talk about is how people lose weight on intermittent fasting, and then I'll talk about what the research says about is it good or not good. And then I'll kind of give you a broader context and my take on it overall about losing weight. So, first off, the way the intermittent fasting works is how people lose weight. People do lose weight doing intermittent fasting, is that there's restricted times that people are not eating. And overall, when that happens, people are eating less calories than they normally are, and that initiates that weight loss. Okay, that's how all diets work, is that they somehow, the way they add up, they end up having a reduction in calories, and that's how people lose weight. Now, on the different types of intermittent fasting, they did find that the alternate day intermittent fasting was slightly more effective than the doing the same thing every single day of the window of being able to eat. But the research shows that when you compare intermittent fasting to other ways of reducing your calories overall, there isn't a difference. So the moral of the story is you you can cut your calories however it works for you, and that's going to help you initiate the weight loss. So you can just pick whatever way works for you in reducing your calories. And there's lots of different ways people do that. One of the things I want to say as a caveat to all of that is whenever people ask me about a particular diet, I always ask them, is this something you can realistically do every single day for the rest of your life? Because you're only going to get long-term results by doing something every single day for the rest of your life, more like a lifestyle change. And a lot of diets can be very restrictive or sort of this controlled eating and not something that's sustainable. And therefore, people have the results while they're doing that particular habit, behavior, diet. But then once they go back to real life, they end up gaining the weight back, which is pretty common. I think like 90 to 95% of the time, people gain weight back after going on a diet. So something to ask yourself is, what can you do every single day for the rest of your life? As it means to reduce your calories so that you end up losing weight, but then you are able to sustain that weight loss over time. So some of the things that people might do are reducing their portion sizes, which is something that's realistically you can do over time. People sometimes will watch how many caloric beverages they're drinking throughout the day. That's just any beverage that has calories in it that just ends up adding extra calories on that they don't end up needing. Other strategies are choosing more nutrient dense, low calorie foods, like more whole foods, fruits, vegetables, grains, things like that, that have a greater amount of nutrients per calorie. So they're not like super high in calories like processed foods can be. And so just making those shifts and watching just how much time you're like, snacking erroneously or, stress eating or, what, all of those things where we're kind of, opportunities or times that we might overeat. So just kind of keeping an eye on that. But not in any extreme way, but more of a way that's like moderate and able to sustain over time. So, that's sort of the context of that. And then I want to end with sort of my viewpoint and, looking at things from a broader perspective. And all diets, I mean, there's been so many diets over time that come up. They tend to be, there's something that's restrictive about them in order for you to lose weight. And there's this idea of what's called intuitive or mindful eating and restrictive controlled eating. And so when we have a tendency to be really restrictive or controlled in our eating, and we set up all these rules like I can't eat at this time and I can't eat this food and this food's bad and this food's good, and all these different things that that as a tendency for us to it kind of backfire a little bit, because the more we can't have something, the more we want to have something. Or it can also not be good for people with disordered eating patterns or actual eating disorders, or it could promote us getting into sort of disordered eating patterns where we're trying to override our signals of hunger. So I'm saying I'm hungry right now, but it's not time to eat. So I need to not eat and starve, almost like starve. And then when I finally eat, I might overeat because my physiological body has not been eating when I've been hungry, and I'm trying to compensate for that. So the idea of this mindful intuitive eating is that we listen to our natural hunger signals and full signals, and the body will naturally self-regulate if we can get into that state and not be in a state of I have to eat at this time. I have to eat this amount of calories. I have to eat, this types of food and not this types of foods, or like more controlled type behaviors. If we really tune into our bodies will naturally regulate by telling us when we're hungry and telling us when we're full. And if we listen to those signals and we don't override those through things of, overeating or, stress eating, whatever it might be that we end up doing that kind of overrides those signals, or just the opposite where we don't eat when we're hungry, then that can create, a sense of controlled and restrictive eating that doesn't work long term. But the mindful approach is something that's sort of more sustainable, where we kind of get in tune with our bodies and listen to our bodies and give them what they need when they're hungry, and then stopping and not overeating when we're full. We're just not hungry generally. We don't have to force ourselves to eat when we're not hungry. So I like that. And then I'm going to just finalize by, as far as intermittent fasting, who it's not appropriate for. Intermittent fasting might not be, I shouldn't say might not, is not appropriate for people with diabetes that actually have to control their blood sugar levels. And it wouldn't be appropriate for pregnant or nursing women. And probably not a great idea for people with eating disorders. So just something to kind of think about if you're going to start a diet, just to kind of check in with your physician to double check that there isn't anything that's going on medically that this would impact before you try a new eating behavior on. All right, I hope that helps.